Hey, good evening and welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin, coming to you here from the gun store in Las Vegas. You are listening to us live on KSHP Radio 1400 AM and watching on YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. Hopefully, if you're watching on YouTube, you're not driving. We go through that every night, and I'm sure somebody's going to have a car.
Unless you're in the back of the limo.
Yeah, well, that's I don't think class like you do. Tonight's guest for the show, our defense attorney, Bill Gamage, sitting to my immediate left, and firearms instructor extraordinaire. That's what you wanted, right? Extraordinaire. Lenny Davis. Bill, would you give listeners a little bit of your background, please, for purposes of the show?
Thank you, Bob. I'm an ex-law enforcement officer. I also ran a firearms program for about 8 years when I was in law enforcement. Taught at academies with you, as you know, and then I became a criminal defense lawyer, and I handled cases involving plaintiffs or people that have problems, mostly also criminal defendants, but also people that are involved in gun issues, self-defense gun issues.
Yeah. We met teaching in a firearms class years ago when we were both instructors. You worked academies, and I actually ended up on a case that you were working on as an expert also. So we've been around the barn. And Mr. Davis.
Yes, sir.
As if anyone didn't know, would you please?
Well, you know, there's got to be millions that watch the show every week, and I'm on it almost all the time.
Couple of hundred,
yeah. Well, my name's Lenny Davis. I'm former special agent with U.S. Customs and Department of Homeland Security, and since 2008, I have been doing acting as an instructor for the U.S. State Department in their Global Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program, and they've deemed me a subject matter expert. So I am, maybe not firearms instructor extraordinaire, but at least firearms instructor expert.
You shoot terrorists.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, Lenny did a lot of work in the Middle East, and seriously is a former State Department trainer of anti-terrorism unit, so you can add a lot of stuff to what we're talking about here. If you wish to send us a question or comment, we don't take live calls, but you can send a text or email to bob@firedupmail.com. Actually, there's a little sign there that says that, so you can find that. We do not answer calls on the air because of the time delays between the radio and the YouTube show. However, we will respond to everybody. If you want a question for Lenny or for Mr. Gamage, you can send that and I'll forward it. Just send everything to bob@firedupmail.com. This show is about guns, politics related thereto, and heavily with self-defense issues. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States. Most are good and valid use of self-defense. Most of the bad uses of guns are, of course, reported in the major media. So we try to balance that out with this show by going over a few things, cases that happened in recent times that show people using guns for self-defense or legitimate purposes. Some are good, some are bad. I picked them out because they're food for thought. There's something in the case that gun owners should be aware of, and you can imagine what you would have done in the guy's position. So sometimes we criticize somebody who did something that was heroic because we look at it and go, you know, he'd done just a niche better if he did this instead. So not to disparage any people, I don't put any names in them, just generally locations and dates. Anyway, so we're going to go through a couple of those and see what you think and if you find something valuable. This is from Breitbart News on the 12th, a few days ago. Police have shot and killed a man who allegedly attacked patrons in Columbus, Ohio restaurant Thursday night, wounding several people. One of the victims was still in critical condition when this was written. This is a well-known media coverage story. WBNS TV 10 reported the suspect entered the restaurant around 6 p.m., asked for the owner. He was told the owner was not in the restaurant. The suspect left. About 30 minutes later, he returned, armed with a machete, and began attacking everyone in the restaurant. One of the witnesses told ABC. He came in, started beating up on another man. I thought it was a personal thing. Then he went down the row, started hitting everybody. People were bleeding. A waitress said as the events unfolded, it looks like he went straight over to the booth and just started mowing down people sitting in the booths. Another customer said he came to each table and just started hitting them. There were tables and chairs overturned. The man on the floor was bleeding. There was blood everywhere. CBS reported, there's a lot of different people I'm quoting here. CBS reported the attacker was a Somali national named Mohammed Berry, and that Berry was on the terror watch list. His uncle, however, told NBC News he was born in Guyana, West Africa, and moved to the United States in the year 2000. He moved to Columbus 2 years ago. According to law enforcement sources, the FBI investigated Berry 4 years ago for expressing radical Islamic views. Law enforcement is concerned that this incident has all the hallmarks of a so-called lone wolf terrorist attack that they've been working on to stop, one law enforcement agency said in an interview. The FBI is now insisting in the investigation, as we all know. A police sergeant revealed that kind of accidentally at one point. He said he did not see any rhyme or reason for the attack. He did not explain why the FBI had gotten involved in the investigation. The owner of the restaurant is an Israeli Christian who formerly lived in Nazareth, Israel. I would simply have to believe that's workplace violence, right, guys?
Only if you're drinking the same Kool-Aid that is spilling from the administration currently. This is a lone wolf Islamic terrorist attack, pure and simple. In 2004, there was a raid done in Iraq, and in that raid came basically a training manual from Al-Qaeda that says, continue to work on the big plots, the big attacks, but use what you have at your disposal. You've seen, this is the second time, or probably the third time that I know of, U.S. soil this has happened. This has gone on several times in Israel in the past few weeks and months. So this is nothing new. I can guarantee you the reason why the FBI is investigating this is because they consider this to be a lone wolf Islamic terrorist attack.
And more information has come out. There's a further story about this almost every day. And I left in here that originally said he was a Somali national, then he said he was from Guyana and West Africa and so forth. Because you got all these snippets from various agencies, there must be 50 news reports on this already, and each gets more detailed. And still, I think finally the FBI has come out and said they believe this was a lone wolf terrorist attack, or got really close to that.
Probably really close
without
having to say it.
Because we don't want to worry the population, and we're all told, we all drink the Kool-Aid, that terrorism is contained, and they're getting all these plots stopped, and they probably are stopping a lot of them. Had there been anybody in this restaurant carrying a concealed weapon, they could have stopped this thing right off the bat, and I am just hammering on that every show now. It says in the Constitution, the militia, which is all of the people, have the right to keep and bear arms so they can come to the aid of the country and so forth and so on. You are the militia, and if there'd been somebody in this restaurant armed, they could have stopped this immediately. And if you've got a permit, carry your gun. This is ridiculous. Again, Fired Up, you can send an email, bob@firedupmail.com, and please do friend us on Facebook. We offer free concealed carry permit classes here at the gun store every Wednesday, Monday, and Saturday, or Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You can find our classes at thegunstorelasvegas.com. This is, I got a couple stories here about CCW holders coming to the aid of officers who were under attack. And that's always a heroic thing to do if you can. It's always really dangerous. Who else is showing up in the middle?
Yes.
Is the officers coming to help the original officer.
Yes.
This is phillynews.com. This was on 210. This goes into a little history. At 3 p.m. every weekday from 6 to 8, township police officers patrol the area near Upper Darby High School as nearly 4,000 kids pour out of the buildings. On that afternoon alone, police responded to 3 fights in 3 locations at the school. When the dust settled, 8 teens aged 13 to 17 were charged with crimes, and 2 officers were injured so severely it's unclear whether they'll be able to return to duty. This is apparently the national sport at this Darby High School. They run out and get into fistfights. Anyway, the most egregious incident took place on Wayne Avenue, less than a mile from the high school. An officer broke up a fight between two teen boys that had attracted a large crowd. The officer was holding one of the combatants at bay when the teen's opponent then attacked the officer. Upper Darby Police Superintendent Michael Chitwood said now he's fighting two of them and he's calling for an assisting officer at the same time. There's a crowd of 40 or 50 kids watching the fight, and they all started to move towards the officer. That's when a citizen came out of his house with a gun in hand and told the teens to get away from the cop. He had the gun in his hand, but he didn't point it at the kids. He just told them to back off. This guy came out of the house to the aid of the officer, and the officer would have had significant problems if he hadn't, said Mr. Chitwood, the police superintendent. The 35-year-old gun owner who has a concealed carry permit came out. The group of teens held him at bay until responding officers arrived. Not only did the first officer try to break up the fight, suffer significant hand injuries, but an officer who responded to the request for backup also suffered an injury to his leg when he was kicked by one of the teens in the fight. The two juveniles are charged now with aggravated assault on police, riot, harassment, related offenses. After-school patrols around the school have been doubled. Our goal is to make sure these kids get home safe, Chitwood said. I can't emphasize it enough, but the majority of these kids are decent kids. I don't know if I'd agree with that, but
sounds like everybody's majoring in rioting.
This has apparently been a constant problem. They have normally assigned a couple of units, 6 to 8 police officers, every Monday through Friday when school breaks up, when they all come out, and now they've doubled that number. From our perspective, the point here is the CCW holder comes out of his house, sees what's going on. He's a hero. He obviously saved the officers from serious bodily harm. These two guys may never return to duty completely because of the hand injury and the guy's leg injury. Not something we recommend, jumping in the middle of a police fray, but I can't tell you,
I think this incident worked out.
It worked out.
It worked out well, but first of all, what is he going to shoot somebody? I mean, he's got his hand on a gun, and he's got a bunch of kids who, according to this incident, aren't armed. And even if he was a cop generally wouldn't go to a firearm in that instance because you're filling your hand up with something you probably aren't going to be able to use because your backstop's not clear. And he doesn't have the tools to defend against a gun grab. And then once somebody tries to come in for the gun, then it's going to go bad there. I mean, this could have been a nightmare.
A million things could go wrong.
And, it's always better to stay back, verbalize, communicate, request responding officers to come in with the equipment to do what they're supposed to do. The officers did what they could do, but they got themselves in deep pretty quick. And, I guess their supervisor will talk to them about that.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, now they've added more units and so on. I just, I look at that and I think I'd have probably done the same thing.
Well, we all would have probably done the same thing, but we'd be still talking about what the hell did I do that for?
Yeah. Please tell me you're not going to say the warning shot thing. You're not going to talk about the warning shot. Please tell me you're not going to talk about the warning shot.
Couldn't have hurt.
Oh boy.
A round in the air might get their attention there. But we're always going to disagree about that.
Oh, yes.
You got 50 kids trying to beat up a police officer.
Well,
you know where the round's going. It makes a lot of noise and they can hear you in the middle of all the yelling and stuff. My colleagues disagree with that. Should never be fired no matter what. This may be one of those circumstances where I would say, well, it probably would have been appropriate.
Well, and the one thing I will add to this citizen, not only did he probably save these two officers' lives, he may have saved several of those kids' lives because at some point, if those officers are down and getting kicked, at that point,
they're going to start firing.
Yeah, their life is they're in danger of being severely injured or killed, and they have the right at that point to use deadly force.
Yeah.
So there's some teenagers that are probably walking around or in juvenile hall now that are lucky to be there because of this man.
Yeah, and you know, when you look at cases like this, this is one of the problems with self-defense. Occasionally, there are cases where there really is no right answer.
Yeah.
And you're taking a guess as to which outcome, bad or worse, that is going to come of it. This guy could have come in there and they jumped him, took his gun, just being an adult without a gun. He could have been an adult there and they started beating on him too. You know, what if, what?
Yeah.
This one worked out. It's cool. Good for him. Warning shot would have helped. But I'm not going to say that on the air. Questions and comments again to bob@fired-up-mail.com. Please friend us on Facebook. That's on the other side of the little sign. We do have a ladies only shooting and personal safety class taught twice a month here on the second and fourth Friday by noted instructor Maggie Mordaunt. It's a really good class. My wife took it last time it was on. Next one is on February 25th. You can sign up on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. Times Free Press reports this week. This is in Pikeville, Tennessee. Events leading up to a shooting started around 5:30 p.m. Police say they got a call that a 33-year-old suspect who was wanted on warrants was walking down State Highway 30, and whoever called thought that he might be armed. An officer made contact with the man who began jerking on something, trying to get it out of his pocket. The suspect started backing away while still trying to drag something out of his pocket that apparently was stuck. The officer told him to get down and on the ground, and the man turned instead and fled into the woods. That drew another bunch of officers who began a search for him. They knew who this guy was, and he had warrants out for his arrest, so that's reasonable. Sometime later, they didn't specify, it appears to be an hour or so from the reading, a resident called to report that a man had broken into her home, took some clothes, and ran out the back door. Then another nearby resident called saying someone was breaking into a truck in her yard and that her son went outside and is holding him at gunpoint. Just as the sheriff entered their driveway, the actual sheriff himself responded with a canine unit. Just as he turned into the driveway, the suspect lunged at the homeowner, who fired a shot out of his .22 rifle. The suspect, who was armed with a 9mm pistol, was hit in the calf, taken into custody by the arriving officers. He is treated for a through-and-through wound at the local hospital. He's in jail and he's fine, the sheriff said to a press meeting. The suspect is being held without bond on accumulated charges, including evading arrest, burglary, aggravated burglary, possession of burglary tools, unlawful possession of a weapon, 3 counts of possession of oxycodone, Alderel, and methamphetamine, possession of marijuana, possession of drug paraphernalia. It appears no charges are going to be filed against the homeowner.
But drugs are a victimless crime.
Yeah, and always take all your drugs with you when you're trying to break into somebody's house, because they need more charges to stick on you. Moron. Anyway, here's an armed citizen. He's out trying to protect his family. Again, that's an heroic thing. However, I'm going to criticize this one a little bit, because he comes out of the house. The sheriff had already been called, and like is pulling in as the guy jumped him. Why leave your house?
Absolutely.
Why not just stay in the house and watch the cops arrest the guy?
It's a car. I mean, you really don't need to use or employ any form of deadly force to try to protect a vehicle.
Unless your baby is left in the car seat and you brought groceries in or something, there's no reason for you to go back out there.
Apparently, there's, I give everybody here a little brief outline. I usually have 2 or 3 of the newspaper stories and so forth, and there's nothing here. I mean, the guy just went out because the guy was in front of his house, and I don't even. It turned out he was armed.
Well, but it doesn't really indicate whether, we don't really know from the facts whether he actually brandished the pistol or anybody really saw it until he got searched.
And until they found it.
Yeah.
When
so
he didn't fire it. So there's no indication that the homeowner saw the pistol. All he knew was the guy jumped him.
Mhm.
And now he's outside holding a rifle. Of course, if the guy takes the rifle away,
Yes.
then the bad guy's got the gun. So he's
Yes.
putting himself in a position
Yes.
they need to be in. If
Yeah.
the police are going to be there, don't go engage the guy. They got free bullet, they got free body armor. They got free lawyers, which this guy probably won't need. But if there's time to wait for the police, wait for the police.
Well, I look at it from a tactical sense also. You've got a guy outside, you're inside, you're safe, you've got cover, concealment in your house.
And a rifle.
And if he tries to come in your house, yeah, then you really got it. But he's really insane if he is, because at that point you've got the whole tactical advantage. You lost all that. You lost all that going outside.
Yeah, this was a bad one. And like I say, the guy's brave. He went out and so and so on. But if there's time, let the police handle it.
No gun retention training. Nothing.
This is just common sense. Don't engage somebody you don't have to engage. Here's my idiot gun accident of the week. The Orlando Sentinel and about everybody else in Florida reported on this. A teen riding a hoverboard and holding a gun apparently lost his balance and shot and killed a 13-year-old boy. The shooter, age 18, and the victim were playing in a bedroom of the victim's house playing video games. The 18-year-old found a gun under the bed and while riding a hoverboard holding the gun, lost his balance. He said the gun went off, the bullet hit his 13-year-old cousin in the back of the head. The younger kid, the victim, was transported to a local hospital in critical condition. He died on Monday from his injury. Police say the gun belonged to a 35-year-old convicted felon who was not home at the time of the shooting. The resident felon has been arrested and charged with possession of a firearm by a prohibited person. Duh. There are so many things stupid and wrong with this incident. A loaded and unlocked gun sitting under a bed, owned by this idiot homeowner who's also a convicted felon. He didn't go to gun safety class. I guess they don't let felons in gun safety class for not leaving guns where kids can get a hold of them.
Usually not.
When they're a felon.
Which is obviously the flaw in the system.
He probably didn't pass a background check either to get the gun.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find out where that came from at some point.
Yeah. Store your firearms locked up safely where irresponsible people, children, idiots riding hoverboards can't get a hold of them.
Can I speak to that for a second?
You're a
Do you do a
hoverboard guy?
hoverboard shooting?
No, I do not do a hoverboard shooting class.
Okay.
I guarantee you that if your folks bought you a hoverboard, they don't like you very well. Okay. Did you see the video of the terrorists a couple of weeks ago on a hoverboard was trying to deliver a bomb strapped to himself on a hoverboard and had a Mike Tyson right there in the street, and he went boom in front of the surveillance camera. No one was injured. So
No one of consequence.
no one of consequence. You got to understand these things are, not only, dangerous, but how stupid can you be, kids? This kid's fallen off that hoverboard. I know he did, because you just didn't jump on that thing and go, oh, I can ride them. Because I know Bill fell off of his 3 or 4 times.
No, it was a segue.
The whole problem with this thing politically, this is, another gun death caused by an owner who obviously didn't get a background check because he'd have failed.
And
then when it's Florida, so this is probably when the election results come on and this gets hooked to it. This is probably Jeb Bush's fault because he used to be governor of Florida and didn't make this felon not get a gun and
Well,
criminals are criminals.
and the reality is exactly right. They're a criminal. I don't think this guy bought this gun. I would guarantee, I would absolutely stake all the money you're paying me for this appearance on this show on the fact that that gun is stolen.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Okay.
Okay.
So we've got a bet now.
The gun was stolen. He may not be the guy that he either stole it or he
Right.
bought it from somebody
Right.
that stole it. Of course, because he can't buy a gun. He can't do a background check. But what annoys me is this is going to be another gun violence death to add to the statistics. And for all you convicted felons with 22s under your bed that you own, lock it up. This guy is going to jail for a long time. Is this, Bill, I mean, I realize we're talking Florida law, but is this a murder charge against the convicted felon for leaving the gun?
Probably not, but it depends on how it goes, whether it goes federal or state. Generally, obviously, the federal government has ex-felon possession laws that are very strict and have pretty severe penalties. I can tell you that a federal judge could easily enhance this punishment. I mean, a whole bunch of levels. And in the state systems, generally, they're a lot less severe in the state systems because of the political issues that are involved. But it would just depend on how this thing went. But civilly, could this person be charged? Absolutely.
Oh, sure. They're going to get all of this.
A number of reasons. But of course, being a convicted felon and obviously being reckless as he is, I'm not certain that he probably was, thoughtful enough to purchase a good sized homeowner's policy, insurance policy, or to have any way of the parents of the 13-year-old, the estate of the 13-year-old recovering in this case. So, everybody's probably out of luck, not to mention this poor 13-year-old who's absolutely innocent. And lost his life.
Yeah, and this guy has no money. There's going to be nothing in himself.
Yeah.
So it's not that matters at this point. A 13-year-old kid who absolutely did apparently nothing wrong at all, but be in the house at the wrong time. Anyway, questions or comments, bob@firedupmail.com. For child safety, the gun store does offer Eddie Eagle firearm safety classes these are kids from 5 to 11. Fourth Friday of each month. They're with all our classes on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. If you've got little children at home and you have guns in the house, mistakes are made. You may leave one without realizing it. You may have the lock off without realizing you didn't put it back on when you left. The little kids, you can gun proof them a long way by getting them to realize the danger of a firearm. This class is for little kids to stay away from guns. It doesn't have guns in the class. It's kind of an anti-gun class, if you will, until they're old enough to be taken out shooting.
It's one of the best things the NRA does, honestly.
Yeah, it really is. This is Inland Valley Daily Bulletin. This was on Valentine's Day, a few days ago, in Ontario, California. A suspected burglar attempted to make his way into a home in the 800 block of West Mission Boulevard just after 5 in the morning. During a short struggle with the homeowner, the unidentified 26-year-old male was shot once in the home's entryway, a police spokesman said. The body of the intruder was found in the doorway of the home. He's pronounced dead at the scene. He is from Los Angeles. His name is being withheld pending notification of his next of kin. The homeowner's wife called the Ontario Police Department at 5:14 a.m. to report her husband had shot the suspect when he tried to force his way through the front door, the officials said in their news release. And this is not unusual. Somebody's trying to push their way into a house at 5 in the morning. And, the homeowner was smart enough to have a gun with him when he answered the door or got near the door. Good idea. What annoyed me about this story was that this is an attempted suspected burglary for the police stats. Pushing your way through the front door of an occupied home at 5 in the morning is generally what we would call a home invasion.
My question is, under California law, do they have it?
It's probably a degree of burglary.
Yeah, I think it's a burglary is a burglary, but you're absolutely right. This is a home invasion.
It may very well be a degree of burglary under California law. Did you do any time ago? I've not studied California law to that extent.
I didn't do any time there. I worked there as a federal
you've
agent.
done time.
Yeah, just as a police officer and federal agent. But
didn't you do that in an undercover capacity?
no, well, I did that in California too, but not
you ever push anybody's door in at 5 in the morning? And
As a matter of fact, I did, but usually when I pushed the door in, it was search warrant
Yeah.
and a flashbang went in before I went in. So,
So I'm thinking an occupied, yes, you're right. Under Nevada law, we have two different statutes. We have a home invasion statute, which is presumed to be a crime of violence, okay? Because you're entering an occupied structure, and deadly force, whatever they're carrying or whatever they're doing, if they're breaking into your house and it's occupied, you generally can execute some deadly force measures to protect yourself or the other people in the structure.
we got a presumption there that they're there to harm the people at the time.
Yeah.
So maybe it might be the law is just written in differently in California. This is a home invasion.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at this and go, okay, what if the homeowner had no firearm in the house? He just was one of these guys who decided not to have a gun in the house because they don't like guns or it's dangerous or whatever. He'd be dead now, probably.
good
Or
probability.
his wife. On that subject, as a married couple, we do have a wedding chapel here at the gun store. We offer shotgun weddings, vow renewals, a simple ceremony, or a whole package can be arranged with all this stuff. We got a big wedding coming up next week here with 45 people and all sorts of things. If you go to the gunstorelasvegas.com and click special events, you will find all the information, who to talk to and so forth and so on. This story is one I really want to talk about, and I know Bill will want to talk about it. This is from WACH TV, Fox 57 in Camden, New Jersey. It was a cute name too, Watch TV, WACH TV. Clever in Camden. Deputies were called to a home on Norden Drive at 3 a.m. Saturday morning. They were met by a 40-year-old resident who told them he had just shot and killed what turned out to be a 17-year-old that was stealing from his truck. There was a second suspect involved who apparently escaped. Now, in the past 6 months, this neighborhood has been hit with several vehicle break-ins as well as larcenies and burglaries. There was a record on a separate vehicle break-in at this same home where 2 firearms were stolen from that vehicle. In this case, the items were recovered that were stolen from the resident's truck included a gas can and a hose they were believed to be using to siphon gasoline from the guy's truck. The resident was cooperative with officers. He gave them his weapon. He was taken into custody and provided investigators with his account of what happened. They were breaking into his truck and he saw him and he shot him. He was then arrested and charged with voluntary manslaughter. The sheriff released this statement. I took the names out, and this is about 2 paragraphs, but this is the point of the case. The resident and his family this is the sheriff talking. The resident and his family went to bed last night with no idea that a few hours later he would shoot and kill someone who tried to steal from him and his family. The burglar may not have even gone to bed last night planning with his buddy to steal from an innocent homeowner. He certainly had no idea he would end up dead. The law states that you can use deadly force to protect yourself, your family, or someone who is in immediate danger of death or great bodily harm. Same as Nevada. The law does not allow you to shoot and kill someone who has stolen from you and is fleeing. Unfortunately, the resident made a split-second bad decision and will now face criminal charges. Law-abiding citizens are frustrated with the failure of our criminal. This is sheriff talking. Law-abiding citizens are frustrated with the failure of our criminal justice system that really does not deter crime. Situations like what occurred early this morning are more and more likely to be the result of that frustration. And I have to point out before we get into talking about this, both the resident and the burglar, the dead guy and the guy defending his truck, have minor convictions for possession of marijuana in their histories. No, this is not a 7-time loser. It's not a homeowner that's a felon. These are 2 regular guys who got in trouble for marijuana possession at some point in New Jersey. The discussion here is, I'll leave it to the lawyer to start with, Bill. This is your client, and he was very cooperative and explained
Yes.
what he did.
obviously when police arrive in a situation like this, there's a gun and there's a body. If he's a lawful gun owner, the calibers are going to match up. So the police are going to know that it probably came from his gun. You can, I would advise anyone to invoke your right to counsel in just about every situation where you're in a shooting. You may briefly advise the police of where you were standing. Very generalized things where
I live here.
The victim was
Here's my
standing.
ID.
Very generalized things. How many rounds you fired, etc. Unless you went through 2 or 3 magazines to say it like Lenny would. But the bottom line is that you can basically only be very vague. But other than that, you should invoke your right specifically to have an attorney present with you during questioning. If you say, I just don't want to answer questions, the police can reapproach you. If you say, I need an attorney present with me questioning, they may not reapproach you until you have an attorney. And that's important because there are some indications of how you can produce an absolute defense of self-defense in this case. It depends. Just because a sheriff says this gobbledygook doesn't make it true, okay? There are different and varying ways based upon subjective information this homeowner had in his mind about this person that he may be able to justify some level of self-defense. It just depends on how specific, the facts are, what's positive, what's negative. And unfortunately, you're definitely going to need an attorney in this case to help negotiate probably a better situation than voluntary manslaughter, that's for sure. If he's going to have to take some criminal liability in this case.
I'm just, looking at this going just on the face, and there's going to be a lot of details, as Bill said. Had he just shut up and then let his attorney go to the police and say, wait a minute, now the guy they'd broken into his truck before and stole a couple of pistols. That gives him reason to believe this guy might be armed.
That may be a subjective indication, especially, it depends on what he knew and can say he knew. Whether or not, like for example, this kind of stuff, the marijuana possession convictions, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Unless he knew for a fact. It's absolutely relevant. It's what the person knows in their mind, and then on top of that, objectively, was the force reasonable under the circumstances? It just depends on the circumstances. And a good attorney who knows their ins and outs around a police report and has good investigators may be able to put forth a very helpful defense. Because think about it, you're on a jury, you have before you a defendant who's not a robber, he's not a drug dealer, he's not a murderer or a child molester. He's a guy who tried to defend his home or property. They're going to want to help your client. And so you've got a lot of it. It's kind of a reverse of what the jury normally sees. They're going to want to help your client if you give them a reason. And a good attorney that goes through the facts can help give them a reason. But the hard part here is that generally in all jurisdictions, and I know you're going to come up with this other weird jurisdiction, but you cannot defend property with deadly force. Period. End of story. It's been around since England.
Here, anywhere you want to go. And that to me is the damning evidence that they find the gas can and they've been siphoning gas out of the truck.
It's irrelevant.
This is, you say now, but
it's irrelevant.
The prosecutor's going to go, look at the evidence. There was,
It is going to look kind of bad in that respect because it's like, okay, you shot this kid for stealing gas out of your car.
Well, look at the price of gas.
That's a hindsight 2020 statement.
Well,
nobody knew the gas was there until the guy was dead on the ground. Or the gas can was there. So
do we have to have attorneys on this?
Damn right.
And I mean the real shame of this thing is none of this would have had to happen if this guy wouldn't have used a firearm for property outside of his home. I'll be the first one to say if somebody kicks your door in and then they got it kind of like their previous case, they've called the ball on that. Here you go outside, and it happened in North Las Vegas 2 or 3 years ago. A very similar situation. Guy was getting tools. He was a handyman. He made his living with out of his truck. He's getting tools stolen. Two guys jumped in the truck and started to drive away in the truck. He stepped out with his Mini 14, and I think he killed one of them, if I'm not mistaken. And so he went to jail for involuntary manslaughter. So, at the end of the day, let's just say by the time he pays someone like you, he's going to have a pretty good sized bill to do this.
Oh yeah.
This is going to be a huge problem in your life. This is not just one of those things where you're going to say, "Oh well, okay, I'll,"
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. And
with the price of gas, it was.
and this guy seems to be a semi-solid citizen, and if he is, there's going to be the civil side
the
of it.
marijuana possession, as Bill said, it doesn't matter. Everybody in California has been convicted of possession of marijuana, probably.
I think including the governor.
A few times publicly, but this is when you're sitting there holding a gun and there's a body there. Dummy up. You need to filter this because you say things that to you sound good.
Let me stop you. Don't filter anything. It's better not to speak than to put your spin on something. But in the end, Bob and Lenny, I think will agree, the right path was to take up a position near the house or in the open door where you have cover, or issue some verbal commands while you're on the phone with 911 and bring law enforcement in. That's what you do. You do a description, write it down, and pass it along to law enforcement. And if a guy comes running at you, close your door, lock it, and wait for the cops to show up. So
don't engage anybody with deadly force that you don't have to engage. They're forcing you to fire. That's what you're looking for.
It's a very good way to put it.
Yeah. Again, free concealed weapon classes Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You'll find them on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. I'm gonna skip over page 8 for now because I want to talk. I'm doing this every show now. Terrorist attacks. We just talked about one, the lead thing on the show, the guy with the machete into a restaurant. Terrorist attacks are happening here. Whether they're domesticated guys who went on the internet and got radicalized, or they snuck in the country, whatever. If you're caught in a terrorist attack, try to run and protect yourself by fleeing the scene. If you can't run, hide somewhere. If you can't hide, attack the terrorist and fight him any way you can, because he's there to kill you. Cowering in the corner wouldn't help the people in this restaurant we were just talking about, or anywhere, You gotta fight back. Carry your concealed firearm if you have one, so you can be the guy in this restaurant that saves the people from getting injured. Better to have it and not need it, et cetera, et cetera.
If I can, I got a friend of mine got a hold of me not too long after one of our last appearances here, and we were talking about run, hide, fight, and he said, it was kind of a little bit of that, well, why should I hide? I'm not a coward. And I said, well, do you have an AK-47? When this guy's got an AK-47, you got an AK-47 and body armor. And I told him about the Bardo Museum attack last year in Tunisia. And I've been there since that attack. I actually trained many of the guys that responded to that and killed these 2 terrorists. 2 days later, they're still doing a deep search of that. The Bardo Museum is huge. It's absolutely huge. They find 2 Spanish tourists that have been hiding for 2 days.
Wow. That
were there when the attack started.
They must have thought there was a hostage situation or something.
Yeah, because they were hiding for 2 days, and finally, when the National Police went in there and started clearing out the place, they found them. But it was two days they hid. So you know what? Those two Spanish tourists are still alive. Okay, there were 18 other people that didn't make it out of the Bardo Museum. So it's not a bad thing to run and hide. Trust me.
Sounds a lot like San Bernardino.
Exactly.
Gun sales are up. We're all aware of that. January this year, there was a record number of background checks again. The FBI created the background check system, and they ran in January 2,545,800 some odd background checks, which beat the previous record of January 2013 by at least 50,000 checks. This is the 3rd month in a row that at least 2 million background checks. Americans are buying more guns than ever. And you have to realize there's way more than that because it only counts background checks and assume that people are getting one gun when they get a background check instead of two. Doesn't track people who sold guns and gave them away, so that reduces the number somewhat. And it's only a general guess about the number of additional guns actually owned by the militia.
What happened, Bob, with, I heard there were legal wranglings about private citizens having to facilitate some sort of a background check if it's an in-state person-to-person private sale.
Yes.
Did that ever happen?
That it's in the law that the seller can call the criminal records in Carson City.
Can.
Yes, and they will, and tell it, who the guy is, his address or social security and date of birth. And they will say, yeah, he can have a gun, or they will say, no, he can't have a gun. But the problem is when we do that, professionally, we're on a 45-minute wait on the phone now to get through.
Wow.
It doesn't work. I mean,
Well, and
Is it a must or a can?
Can.
So
they're
they
not
don't have
required
to.
to. No,
Okay,
they're
I
not
didn't think
required
so.
to yet. Right. There's a ballot initiative coming up that will require that if it passes in Nevada, and it's going to end up on the ballot because the legislature is not going to put that into law. So it will become the ballot measure in 2017.
Okay.
About the same time California is losing all their magazines, we'll be having universal background checks. Probably. Depending on, whether you get out and vote, if you vote your gun rights, that's a better idea than, you're thinking, well, there's nothing wrong with me. I can get a background check and I can pass. You can at the moment. And that may change because this passing the background check depends on what? Now we're looking at people on the no-fly list can't get a gun, even though there's no reason for them to be on the no-fly list, and you can't get off the no-fly list.
Can you
Ted
get off?
Kennedy was on it, so
Can you get off the gun ban list?
no, you can't.
Working on that. I'm actually doing research. I believe there is an appellate process, a regulatory appellate process. It just hasn't been worked out, but I believe the statutes do allow for it. And I have a couple of different individuals that have come to me asking me to assist them with that, especially in the area of mental health bans. Because if you think about it, if you have a breakdown, if you get better and you're treated, and it just depends on the nature or the specific facts of that mental health issue that you had. And if you're reported, then all of a sudden you're banned for life. I mean, and again, it's a Second Amendment issue.
Yep. It said on the news this week, Twitter has suspended 125,000 accounts since mid-2015 for threatening or promoting terrorist acts. In a blog, the U.S.-based firm said the accounts primarily related to ISIS, so-called Islamic State groups. We condemn the use of Twitter to promote terrorism, Twitter said, and it's released a report reviewing so forth and so on. It has 500 million users around the world. We have seen the results, including an increase in account suspensions for this type of activity shifting off of Twitter, the company said. It added that it is cooperating with law enforcement bodies when appropriate, as well as other organizations. So after ISIS attacks killed or tried to kill hundreds of innocent civilians, Twitter finally decided to cut off their communications when appropriate, as Twitter says.
Do you think it's looks like a guy who's like 22 years old? He's in a room, someplace, and he just like does a search or something, and then he's got like a red button. That's all. That's the only button he's got. And then he just decides. There's like a committee, and in this committee they have to have representatives of all of the different Muslim sects or Christians and business.
See, and you're also.
And then there's a vote process.
You're forgetting that a terrorist, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Absolutely.
So, it doesn't have to be a Muslim to be a terrorist.
So I'm thinking the first is the way it is. It's just some guy. He's like an intern. He's probably an intern.
He's probably a
$8
an hour intern.
He's an intern, and he's making the decision on banning ISIS. He's affecting policy.
I mean, how many people have to kill before Twitter goes, they got a First Amendment right to plan to kill Americans, and we can't interfere with it.
I'm sorry.
What part of them being at war with us is missing?
Here's my take on it. And this is strictly my take on this whole thing, folks. If you get on social media in any way, shape, or form, and you threaten to do an act of terrorism, or you threaten to kill law enforcement officers or military or anything like that, your butt needs to go to prison for a long time. And when that would happen, and I'm sorry, yes, you have your First Amendment right, but when you're talking about making threats to kill people and kill law enforcement officers and blow things up, you lose that. My only opinion, sorry, I mean.
Well, Twitter will stop those when it's appropriate.
Well, I love their giant push with 500 million accounts, and they knocked off 125,000.
Well,
they're really.
There's a lot of people they got to look at.
That's all an intern could get.
Yeah,
to.
I guess you know.
The funny line of
You
the
had a
week,
full master's degree candidate. You know,
the funny line of the week. We're almost at the end here. Goes to Alan Gottlieb of the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. It's an organization up in Washington State. There was a storyline about gun violence research appearing in the Seattle Times, and the website continues to push for federal funding of anti-gun research by the Center for Disease Control. As we all know, they want to do that. The Center for Disease Control do research on why guns are bad and this and everything. And Alan Gottlieb read the whole thing and said, gun ownership is not a disease. It's a great line.
so it's obviously a federal agency power grab attempt, because we're going to classify gun ownership as a disease, a psychosis of some kind.
Oh, God. Friends of the NRA dinner is coming up February 27, Texas Station. You can call 702-308-8038, 702-308-8038 to get tickets. Fundraiser for the NRA, Friends of NRA. You can look it up on the internet, Friends of NRA. Crossroads of the West got a gun show at Cashman on March 5 and 6. We're going to be back next Tuesday here from 5 to 6 p.m. on 1400 AM radio with guest murder defense attorney Clark Patrick. I want to thank you all for listening to us on KSHP Radio and watching on YouTube. Remember, questions and comments you can send to Bob at Fired Up Mail, and be sure to friend us on Facebook at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. And I'll see, I got about a minute left, and we're going to go back and pick up one of these that I skipped. I ran across on BATF's website. They send us updates because we're dealers and so forth. And somebody asked BATF, how many firearms must you sell in a year's period to be considered engaged in business? So you have to go get an FFL. And their answer was, there is no identity of a specific number of firearms that you must, that you sell or transfer before you have to get an FFL. It says if you're devoting time, attention, and labor to engaging in firearm sales, then you're engaged in business and you're consequently required to have an FFL. So if there's not a specific number of firearms, looking at this, it seems to me that, you sell a gun to your neighbor, even one is enough. If you're selling it for financial gain or whatever, that's...
No. There's a difference between opening up or hanging a shingle and say you wanted to sell your 10 or 15 guns in your personal arsenal because you've changed your philosophy on gun ownership, but you still have a job, right? And you work 9 to 5 at another job, So no, it's about a totalities of the circumstances test.
So if you're devoting time and attention and buying more guns to resell,
it needs to be your primary focus. You're in business to do it.
So it's I'm wrapping it up. Thank you all for listening and watching Fired Up again. Bill, we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Lenny?
Am I signed up?
Again? I don't know. I didn't look at the chart. You're on there once a month somewhere.
I just came this time because Bill was here.
Okay. Well, I know. It's